Rebekah. For those of you who don't know me, I graduated in May, but I was hired in April by Pyramid Foods, or Price Cutter, here in town. So it's one of our local retailers, and there are about 47 stores within the company. So it's much smaller than a company like Hy-Vee. And so they just started a health and wellness program with the hire of myself and one other dietitian in the area. So I'm kind of going to be talking about some of the big factors in getting started in retail or in the business side of dietetics, because there's a lot of area for growth and a lot of room for upward growth if you're wanting to move kind of into management or director position and kind of have that influence over some of the things that are going on and that are reaching our customers. So here we go. So this is just kind of a list of what we're going to go through. We'll talk about roles in retail. So there's a lot of different positions that dietitians can take on there. Communication, its importance, making partnerships both internally and within the community, and then expressing ROI, which is return on investment, and then putting it together, so pitching a job. So like I said, I got hired with one other dietitian, and we've kind of been put into a corporate role. And so at some point, which hopefully very soon, we're going to be looking to hire on more dietitians. And so this is something that I've kind of been looking at, and that if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you might be interested in. And you could take it into retail, into service areas like Walgreens and different convenience stores that are looking at hiring health and wellness professionals as well. So just to kind of introduce this area, retail is a frequent customer touch point. So most of your average shoppers come into a grocery store 1.6 times a week. So it's a lot more often than they're going to be coming into a hospital or a clinic, typical traditional settings for dietitians to be in. So a lot of your food decisions are made at the point of purchase. So they're made in the aisles. People are buying things that afternoon or that day at some point that they're then taking home and they're cooking that night. So there's not as much planning that's going on, and it's because we have a lot more millennial shoppers and a lot more single household shoppers than we did before. And so there's just a lot of room for influence for health and wellness in the grocery store and retail areas. So the number of supermarket dietitians currently is estimated to be about 500 to 600 nationally. That's a 2011 number. I think it's a bit higher now, but it's still a pretty small field. A lot of stores like Homeland, which is out of Oklahoma, still have one corporate dietitian, and her name's Allison, and she actually is the only corporate dietitian for 300 stores. So she doesn't do any in-store activities. All of her reach is through media. It's through like Q&As, so email questions, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different structures that are going on, and there's no like one format or right or wrong. So points, retail margins are tight, and retail leadership is always looking at their bottom line. So I've been there for less than 6 months, and that's what I get every time we go into meetings with all of my superiors is, so how is this making money? How much are we spending on it? How is it turning a profit? What is our benefit? And so that's huge for them. That's what they want to know. And so it's kind of a transition from where we're used to saying, the patient's feeling so much better, or they're learning so much, or they're controlling their blood sugars. These guys don't really have a lot of interest in that. Not to say that they don't want people to feel healthy, but they want to know, are they buying more items? Are they shopping more often in your store? What does that look like? So being able to communicate that and the value of the services that you're providing is really, really important, both on the back end and going in and kind of promoting yourself into that position. So those are important things to think about. Some other things that I find really interesting, 80% of customers report that they are trying to eat healthier. So that's 80% of your common people out here on the street come in and they say they're looking for some kind of information that says, I should pick this over that. And so I think typically if you walk into Walmart, which is where a lot of people shop, you're not getting that from anywhere. You're seeing whatever is on a label, which Brittany's going to talk more about, those kind of claims when she comes up. So they're really needing someone to help direct them. And I think that's a huge role for us, is making kind of a place for us to come in. So according to the National Nutrition and Youth Trends 2011 report, RDs are only cited as a source of information for 1% of the population. So that's really sad. Whereas with the highest credibility out of anyone at 71%. So I think there's a huge disconnect from where people are getting their information and where they feel their information should be coming from. So I think that's why it's so important that this field continues to grow in this way, and that we kind of reach out to this population in this area. So this is just a quote from FMI, which is the Food Marketing Institute. So retail dietitians lead shopper education in nutrition and health, partner with merchandising, marketing, and communications to drive sales, engage with social and traditional media, and drive retailers' health brand through community outreach. So it sounds pretty short and simple and concise, but there's a lot going on. So these are just a few different examples. I was talking about different company structures and where RDs are located within the company. So they can come in under your health and wellness director or marketing department, which is pretty common. I think they can be located under a pharmacy team or under natural foods and grocery, which is where initially my job was placed. And we've kind of moved under more like a marketing and merchandising sector. So you can kind of shift. I talked to some people and they said it took them 3 years to figure out where they were actually going to be placed under, where their part of the organization was going to grow and really flourish. So it takes a while when you're building something brand new. But there's room for you to work up into roles like director, vice president of health and wellness, definitely a lot of room for expansion, and the influence that comes with those titles. So defined roles, there's the corporate levels, regional, and then store RDs. I thought initially I was hired kind of in the store role. They gave us an office in one store, and I was like, I'm going to hang out here and talk with customers and put out nutrition information in this store. No, that's not what I've been doing. I've kind of moved up. We've been placed at the corporate office, so we're doing a lot more interaction with other departments as far as marketing, community outreach, public relations, and so we're still working in those areas. But each one of these different roles kind of takes on its own tasks. So in the corporate role, you're not having as much interaction with the community as you would as an in-store dietitian. But there's a lot more going on as far as media, marketing, looking at education and training of your other team members. So you may not directly be educating a patient, but you may be educating pharmacy technicians or people who work in your produce area about things that they can talk with customers with. And you can create kind of an amplifier effect there. And once you get your fellow employees on board with you, it can really create that like whole company approach. There are definitely specific skills that are required in the retail area. Being a strong interpersonal worker is really important. You cannot have a shell, you cannot be an introvert at all. You have to be up and going every day when you get to work, whether that's with your coworkers or with customers, because there's always somebody who wants to talk to you. Being highly organized, having good project management skills, communication skills, being adaptable and willing to embrace change is really, really necessary. Because you may go in one day with the idea that this is what you're going to do and this is what you're going to spend your time doing, and 30 minutes into your day you haven't finished your coffee yet and somebody has 5 different places for you to go. And so you change what you're doing, drop everything, and you redirect. Being creative is huge, and that's probably my biggest challenge. I'm not artistic, and I've been having to draw on chalkboards and put together flyers, and I need a graphic designer, a graphic artist really bad. You can try and train. Creativity is challenging. Being a problem solver, being self-driven, it's a hugely independent role. My superiors have no idea what I do. And I have some of them who will come in and they're like, so what have you done all day? And it's really something that you have to learn how to explain to them what you're doing and how you're building value for their company. Because they just kind of look at you like, you're just hanging out, like surfing the web, and there's a lot of research and development that goes into what you're doing each and every day with customers. So being able to give presentations to large and small groups and practicing those, so I'm practicing on all of you. Having that specialty training and expertise, and then being customer focused. There are a lot of training programs, and this is a huge area for networking. I was talking to somebody before we started about how important that was, and it has been my lifesaver. from the very beginning. I've been able to reach out to all these people I've met at different conferences, and they've been like, yeah, hey, this is what we did, or it took us, it took a year for people to know who I was, and so it's kind of, you have that reassurance that you're on the right path from them, and then they have a lot of great ideas. And it's still a relatively new area for retail, and so it's kind of hard to get started, and it's nice to hear from those people who have been doing it. Enjoying food and culinary exploration. So, no. Okay, I'm gonna have to hold it there. Don't move. So being a learner and extrovert, friendly and approachable, just think about who you'd like to talk to if you're going into a grocery store and asking questions, and be that person. I think one of the biggest probably hurdles is the attitude that all foods can fit, and being ethical and really considering what you're telling people, because we know that research shows certain things about food and about processed foods, and anyone who's been in the Cox internship has heard this a million times, and I promise you it doesn't ever go away. You're always like, oh, I can't do that. And so it's really challenging to work in an area where they're going to sell Coca-Cola, and they're going to sell Cheetos, and they're going to sell Ho-Hos and Ding Dongs and everything else under the sun. And you can't sit there and slam it, because they have to be able to sell it. So you really have to play to your other areas, to your health foods, to your produce, things that you can really push and say, I stand behind this, versus having that attitude that you should cut things from your diet. So it's just a different approach you have to take, but you really have to think about where you're coming from. And a lot of shoppers are really wanting that transparency. They want to know what's going on. The labels that are on the bags aren't necessarily enough for all of them anymore. Just a sticker that says whole grains. They want to know why it's whole grains. What makes it a whole grain? What's the ingredient on the bag that's important? What does that do for me? And so I think that's something that's really great to see that change happen, but it's also a challenge to be able to answer those questions about any and every food in the store, because they will bring any and everything to you and say, what does this do? And it's like, I don't know, but I can find out and let you know. So, being decisive, well-spoken, management's a huge part of it. I'd say if this is something you're wanting to go into, or you're wanting to be in the business world at all with dietetics, take a business class, take a marketing class, take a management class, one of them, because it's going to help you immensely when you get started, because it's really challenging to come in and say, okay, I have 6 different social media platforms that I'm supposed to be utilizing, and none of them operate the same way. Every single one of them has to be phrased differently. There are different quirks to each one, and so spending your time learning how to use all those things instead of being able to start reaching people, it's kind of frustrating. You have to kind of work backwards. Measuring your work, having a really solid vision, and being innovative, and being able to develop new ideas. Too far? Okay. So communication is huge. I don't know what this little guy's doing. Okay. Communication is a really big component of what we do. You have to be able to communicate what you're doing to all those you're working with, as well as communicating to your customers what you want them to know. So making sure you know who your audience is really important, and being able to tailor your message to them. You have to be able to tell your story and have a really solid mission and really solid goals for what you're doing, so that you're not getting sidetracked and going a million different directions. This is some information again from the Food Marketing Institute about grocery shoppers and just the variation. So 70% of primary shoppers are women, and that seems like a lot, but that number is way down from what it was 30 years ago. It's a huge shift, and a lot of your households are now sharing shopping responsibilities. So you've got a lot of dads who are coming in. You've got 25% of your shopping population are self-shoppers. So they're those people who are in college or who are still young and on their own. So they're doing it all, 100%. And you can see like each one shows how much that person spends per week. And so that's what your your superiors are going to be concerned with is who you're bringing in and how much they're spending in their store. So it's kind of just a shift in your mindset, not tricking people into buying things they don't need, but showing them how they can use things that they may not be utilizing now. So when you're communicating with people outside your work area, you want to convey the key message you have and have a consistent point of view. You're drawing attention to the programs and events that you're doing, and with a lot of those you're reaching a large audience, and one of the best ways to do that is with social media and traditional media methods, which there are a ton of. So it's necessary to reach all of your consumer base, and that's utilizing radio, television, print, which is still a huge use, especially in smaller areas. All of your social medias, blogging, which is new to me, and then all of your in-store signage, and utilizing any events to get this out there to your consumers. So internally, you're wanting to build advocates for your program, and that can be kind of challenging, especially if you have kind of an environment that really doesn't function on health and wellness. A lot of people who work in grocery are used to just thinking about sales, and there's a huge shift that kind of has to happen there. So you really have to look at how you can help promote employee health and wellness programs and kind of shift their mind and have them understand what you're doing and how you're trying to reach people. So that they will go out and then tell people, hey, we've got these great dietitians in our store, they love talking about this stuff, you should come and meet with them, all of those things. And then the biggest one internally is being able to communicate the activities that you're doing, all the events you're putting on, and how they're adding value to the company. So with that, you're showing them what their return on investment is, and so that's your performance measure used to evaluate the efficiency of an investment. And so you are the investment. They're investing in you, they're investing in your salary, and they're hoping that you can bring them some kind of value from that. So being able to answer what aspect of the business you're hired to support is really important. If you're under pharmacy, how are you helping them to drive their sales? If you're under a certain department, how are you helping produce drive their sales, or your meats category to drive their sales? So your ROI really varies based on whatever role that you're taking on. So products are a little bit easier to measure because they're tangible. You can count them. So things like sales lift, which is the increase in dollars per transaction that your customers are showing, total sales basket size, and then your media impressions, which is something that's really kind of cool. You can see how many people like you're reaching with every Facebook post, and who's clicking it, and who's liking it, and who's sharing it, and they're like numbers and diagrams and all kinds of stuff. So if you like charts, it's a lot of fun to see all of those things. So examples of those are food products, supplements, non-food items. And you're going to work a lot with your internal departments to learn how to communicate those and find all of those numbers and get those to the people who need to be seeing them. So then services is more of a what can you do for me? So these are intangible things, and these are what a lot of store dietitians are doing. I'm sure Brittany has done quite a few consults and store tours and cooking demos, things of that nature, which are really reaching maybe a smaller group of customers than your promotions would be, but it's still really important, and you're really building that customer loyalty, which is kind of what we want to have from our services. So you can use marker products, frequency of store visits, basket size, event attendees. There's so many ways to do it, and you really need to understand how your program's mission goes with the company's mission to know what of those you need to be reporting to your supervisors. So one of the biggest things that I've been kind of working at and doing so far is creating partnerships. So it's been a lot of work going out into the community, reaching out to the American Heart Association, reaching out to groups like SWAC, just to kind of get ideas with them about how we can work with them to help bring awareness to health. You get a lot of backing, a lot of support from those individuals, and you have to look for groups that have the same goals that you do. Because you can really identify those important partnerships and establish a structure for them, and they can be really beneficial. And then it's great to see how everybody wins in that situation, how you communicate those results to all of the people involved. So there's a lot of options. You have more traditional partners who are going to be more health oriented, and then non-traditional partners like coffee shops and dinner clubs, different places that people are frequenting more often, that may or may not have the same population to reach that you do. So if you're going to go out and you're going to try to sell yourself, and this is in retail, and this is also applies if you're selling yourself as an individual who's just going to go out and give nutrition advice. Are you going to be a blogger? Are you going to be an LLC? How are you wanting to really reach people? You need to understand the problem and your solution to the problem, and be able to communicate that either to the people you're interviewing with, or understand that to help you define the mission for your business. Knowing how you can increase sales and how you can improve community exposure are both different sides of that. So if you're working kind of on your own, you're going to look at how you can increase your exposure with people, how you can reach out to them and get them to know your name. The sales is definitely going to be more a business side of things, and that's if you're working with retailers, if you're working with health and wellness groups, gym memberships, those kind of things. But your goal is to be able to show how you're improving the bottom line. Need some duct tape. And then what services you're offering to improve the customer's loyalty, because that's your end goal, really. You want people who are loyal to your programs, and you want people who are loyal to your store. So, anybody have questions? Brittany's talking more about items and store education, so it'll be more interesting than this part of it.
I have one question. So you talked about like keeping track of your numbers about like your demographics and how much they're spending.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find those numbers, or like keep track of them? How does that work?
A lot of companies have loyalty cards, and so like Hy-Vee has a loyalty card. We don't have one currently. We're working on getting those put together, and they haven't for a while because it's kind of a complicated program to set up. But they really kind of help you, and then looking at just your foot traffic, what times people are coming into the stores, knowing what's going in their baskets, and they kind of, from those statistics and that information, they build on as far as like what age is, what's your family size, those kind of things, which are inferred numbers, but it's kind of scary how accurate they are. And then just looking at your regions where you're in. So a lot of our stores are in smaller rural areas like Monette and Forsyth, Webb City. So our populations there are definitely different than our populations in Springfield are. So that's probably one of the most challenging parts, is figuring out what the needs are of all those individuals.